just assume that the absolute worst version of yourself is going to show up every day and you'll be fine. Alright, ciao y'all, welcome to Making a Musician. It's me, your host Helen, from my lovely hotel room in Mexico, in Morelia. It is beautiful here. It is also kind of loud, so sorry about that. Today we're talking about struggling with like consistency, and I mean like consistency in like achieving your goals or just like showing up every day, doing the things you want to do. And I don't mean consistency in like a girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep kind of way. I mean like literally just like the ability to show up for yourself every day, because that's kind of difficult to cultivate. It's something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of us, and I think that it's something that you can definitely learn. And I'm really fortunate because just for some reason in school, I happened to have a lot of educators who really cared about cultivating this. And I also think that being a musician, there's a lot of overlap with like setting goals and like figuring out how you're gonna achieve things. So if you don't know how to do this yet, or you find you're struggling with it, I am here to help, and hopefully this will get you there. Here we go. Okay, so the first method I have is showing up every day, and it doesn't matter what capacity you show up in. So you wanna focus on showing up every day and just doing whatever work you're able to do, and we're not focusing on the quality of the work. I stress this a lot with my students, and I tell them things like, it's more important in the beginning that we set up a practice of showing up every day to practice, instead of showing up every day and practicing for 2 hours and getting amazing work done. Just make sure you cultivate a habit of coming and doing something every day. Just like cultivate a habit of showing up and doing something every single day. We can worry about quality later. Daily work is step one. So let's say you're learning an instrument, and maybe your ideal goal is that you're gonna practice 30 minutes to an hour every day. That's a great goal. That's probably gonna help you make a lot of progress. But say you had a crazy day at work and you just realized that it's like 8 p.m. at night, you wanna go home and go to bed, you're exhausted, and you're like, oh God, and I have to go home and do 30 minutes to an hour of practicing. No, you have to go home and just do something. I don't care if you sit down at the piano and you just warm up, or you just play through some scales. Every single day, just do something. And it's more important to show up every day than to show up and do great work every day. And you start to realize that like you can actually get a lot done in a really small period of time. And if you only have 5 minutes a day to practice, every 5 minutes be really intentional about what you want to get done, and you will do a lot. Okay, so my next piece of advice is to plan for failure, right? Like it'd be great if we lived in a perfect world where things went the way that they were supposed to go. And I always say that when I make a plan, God laughs. Because it never goes the way I want it to. So I'm assuming that pretty much everyone feels that way. So just plan that things will go awry, because they will. All right, we're gonna keep running with this like learning an instrument metaphor, because like, hello, musician, but just know that this works with anything in your life. Okay, so say we're sticking with the goal if we want to practice 30 minutes to an hour a day, and say that you decide that for you, the easiest time to get that done is before you leave for work in the morning. So you wake up a little bit early, you have your coffee, you hang out, you practice, you're ready, and then you head out the door to work. And so when you wake up, say you go into your living room and practice that day, and you realize that your dog has just like thrown up all over the living room. Like we're imagining it is like horrifying crime scene level, just like, oh my God. So that means that you might not get your practice in for the day, right? Like you are no longer able to sit down and work on your beautiful little Bach fugues. No, you gotta clean dog vomit and maybe like make a vet appointment. So what do? We plan for failure. Maybe you decide that you can practice in your car on your lunch break, or maybe you decide you can practice in your office after work. You might also find other things to substitute like regular practice with. So like you could do ear training, you could do finger practice. So I know this is really common with woodwinds, like they'll grab a pencil and like practice, do we like my woodwinding, and practice like doing the fingerings for whatever song that they're working on. You could bring a mouthpiece with you. You could do a lot. You could even just do mental practice, and that still counts. Like you're doing something and giving yourself a little bit of grace, because things didn't go according to plan today. They went shockingly awry. You just know that it's going to be okay, and tomorrow is another day, but today you did what you could. And granted, like none of these alternative practice methods are like completely ideal, and they don't replace like regular practice, but they're good enough as a substitute and as a way to keep you showing up every single day. 80% of life is showing up. That's what my band director used to always say, and I think it's really true. Showing up to things and just like sitting down and getting there will get you very far in life, and that includes whatever goal you're trying to do, no matter how long you show up. All right, so number 3 is setting visual reminders around your home. So if you have seen one of my videos, you have probably at some point heard me reference or like seen the board, and let's cut to some beautiful footage of my beautiful, stunning board. Amazing. So this board basically has things that correlate with all of the goals that I'm working on in my life and like steps that I can take to getting there. Literally just seeing the board reminds me that, oh yeah, I have things that I need to be working on and working towards. And whenever I'm kind of like finding myself aimlessly meandering around my apartment looking for something to do, I can look at the board and be like, oh, I should do something with one of those tasks. I will say, I do think I have ADHD, so maybe if you don't think you have that, this might not be such a struggle for you. But for me personally, it's a big issue. So the board really helps to fix that. So maybe you don't want to go full crazy woman mode and make a board. I would also recommend maybe things like putting a sticky note somewhere that you go a lot every day, just like with a little reminder, writing something on the mirror. If you're trying to learn an instrument, something that I really recommend doing is leaving it out of the case, like buy a stand for it and leave it out so that you see it. And then it's not a matter of like, sit down, take out the instrument, start practicing. It's like, pick it up and you go, we're done, we're ready. You could also try making a vision board, so like a literal, like cutting out pictures of the things that you want to do and putting them up. That might help you. I know personally I'm a very visual person, so that can be really cool for me. All right, so we get the idea. Next up is consequences and rewards. Okay, so I don't actually mean like punish yourself if you don't get things done. I mean just like setting up natural consequences and rewards through things like milestones. So for example, I'm a singer and it's really important that I practice, and I am also a human, and as a human I'm a very lazy person, fun fact. And as a lazy human, I don't want to practice. So if I don't have anything that I need to practice for, i.e. a recital or performance coming up, it's a lot easier for me to like push off working on certain music till tomorrow, and then like tomorrow just keeps going off into the distance. You hear what I'm saying? So in order to keep myself motivated, I always make sure that I have something that I'm working towards. For example, I recently did a recital, and I didn't really need to do the recital, I just thought it would be a really great idea. And on that recital, I put a bunch of music that I didn't have to have prepared until like 2 or 3 months in the future. And that way, I no longer have 2 or 3 months to work on this music and get it ready. I have a month to get it ready for this recital. And then knowing that it's ready for the recital, it'll be in really amazing shape when the other things that I need it for come up. Should I be working on these things now? Yes, but I know myself, and I'm a lazy woman who has a lot on her plate. So realistically, if there's not something kind of pressing, it's probably potentially not gonna happen. So cue the recital. Now I have a much closer date that I'm working towards, and I know that if I don't do the things I need to do come the recital, I'm gonna make a real fool of myself, and suddenly this lazy girl is very motivated and has no trouble practicing. So another example of this is how every Monday I meet up with my German friend, my German bestie, Ciao Y'all. I know that if I don't study German throughout the week, I'm probably gonna have like a kind of boring Monday with her, and we're probably gonna have like unsatisfying conversations. I'm gonna have to constantly be like, wie sagt man das? Ich weiß nicht, ach, aber, going on a dictionary app, it's not fun, nobody likes that. So, on the other hand, I know that if I practice and work really hard, when Monday comes, I am in for a lot of really interesting conversation that just like flows naturally. I might have to pull my phone out a couple times and look up a few words, but it's a lot more interesting if I work throughout the week on my goal of speaking German so I can hang out with my friend and have really awesome German conversations. These are natural consequences and rewards. All right, so number 5 is to find your why. The why is the reason that you're doing what you want to do. And let's stick with the language example, just like for fun. So when I was in school, I studied vocal performance, and as a vocal performance major, I got to study a lot of languages. And so one of the languages I got to study was Italian, and as you know, probably if you've ever taken a language class, a big part of studying foreign languages in the school system is just like memorizing long lists of vocabulary. And if you've seen my video on language learning, you know I really hate doing that. Like studying grammar is my least favorite part. I would rather go in with almost zero knowledge and just start trying to talk to you and learn that way than studying grammar. So school, while I learned a lot, it was a little bit tricky for me to get myself motivated until I found my why. So I remember this specifically when I was in my Italian class and we had a unit on cars. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, I don't want to learn the parts of the car in Italian. I don't care about the parts of the car in Italian. I don't care about any of this. And then I realized, well, I'm a singer. It's very reasonable for me to assume that someday I might be a singer who is working in Italy and having problems with their car and might need to go to a mechanic. And suddenly, learning all of this car vocab seems really, really relevant. Suddenly, this vocab isn't a tedious chore, it's something that's very relevant and vital to my future. I need to learn these words so that future Helen doesn't get ripped off by this like grimy mechanic who is probably trying to take advantage of me. And if I don't speak good Italian and know all of these words and things, I'm not going to be able to advocate for myself and like really get the best deal in this situation. So then what I would do is I would imagine Helen arguing with this grimy mechanic using these vocab words that I was studying, and suddenly it was really important that I learned them, and it wasn't a chore that was tedious and boring and annoying. It was me setting future me up for success because I'm giving her the tools that she needs to succeed in that situation. Okay, here is my final tip, and it is just assume that the absolute worst version of yourself is going to show up every day and you'll be fine. So let me explain what that means. So I have this wonderful image of myself. She's such a nice girl, she's well motivated, she works really hard, and she shows up every day and does the absolute best that she can do, and she gets a lot done. And that version of me shows up, I would say, a solid 70 to 75% of the time. And that's great, she gets a lot done, I love her for it, it's amazing. Now there's like a slightly less productive version of myself. You know, still very charming, very motivated, very lovely, shows up and gets a good chunk of what she needs to do done, but not everything, but she still does pretty good. And I would say this version of me shows up about 20% of the time, right? So still pretty solid. We're looking at a solid, like 90% of the time I am at least 80% capacity. We'll say 95% of the time. I'd say 75% of the time, Helen, who's got it together, is in charge. She's driving the boat. They're like 20% of the time, 80% capacity, Helen shows up. But y'all, oof, sometimes we get 5% capacity Helen. And 5% capacity Helen is not dressed for the day. She's in her pajamas, her hair's in a messy bun. She's tired, she feels like garbage. She doesn't feel ready to conquer anything. And she's gonna show up and do the bare minimum that needs to be done in order to just like make a little bit of progress and like maintain where she's at. Y'all, I'm gonna be honest, like 5% of the time Helen is, we said in sweats, no, she's probably in a robe and at the absolute end of her rope. So let's make a practice routine where 5% of the time hot mess Helen can like show up and just do that and know that if she shows up like that, everything's gonna be okay. So for me, 5% of the time hot mess Helen routine is showing up, warming up, stretching out the whole voice, going through some cadenzas, and then doing some exercises to like work on different runs that I have a tricky time with. And this practice routine can take me 10 to 15 minutes. It can be less. I can get it done pretty fast. And so then when hot mess Helen is like, I don't want to, I'm just like, girl, we show up every day, no matter what capacity. It's gonna take 10 minutes. You're gonna feel good about yourself. Let's do it. And that is very important. That is crucial. And that way, when 95% of the time, capable Helen comes along, she does the hot mess Helen routine, and then more, and a lot gets done. I make consistent progress because I figure out the absolute bare minimum that I need to do every day, and I make sure that I do at least that. That's like 5% of the time Helen's job. And then most of the time I do a lot of extra things on top of that that help me make really great progress as well. But on my worst days, I can show up and do at least the bare minimum, and that means that we are golden. Another aspect of showing up on your worst days that I don't hear people talk about is how much confidence it gives you. So as a singer, it can be really like nerve-wracking to go into performances with like repertoire. I don't do easy repertoire. I do only like challenging, really scary repertoire. And it gives me a lot of confidence knowing that I can do all of this music and execute it well, even on my worst day. That makes me feel good. Like I'm like, ooh girl, I can do this with the cat screaming at me in my robe, just like exhausted, ready to cry, and I got this. Like I'm good, because on performance days, I'm excited, I'm ready to be there. It's not hot mess Helen, that is like 95% of the time Helen, and I know I can do it. So showing up on your worst days gives you confidence. Okay, now let's address a couple of little external factors that might be the reason that you're not achieving the things that you set out to achieve. Because if you're doing all of these things and you're finding you're still not able to be consistent, I think that there's something else that we need to address in your life probably, right? Okay, the first one, the big one, the main one is burnout. This is huge. If I see that 5% of the time Hot Mess Helen is showing up more than 5% of the time, that's kind of a cue to me that I might be burned out and I need to take some time for me. So that's a sign that I need to take an audit of my life and figure out what's going on. And then I can see what needs to happen. Do I need a day off? Do I need to change my focus? Do I need to set better or new boundaries? Do I need to change my approach? And is where I'm putting my daily energy aligning with my goals? And if you're doing all of the things that I mentioned in the video and you're still struggling to be consistent, take a life audit and see what's going on and see what might be getting in the way. All right, the next one is unrealistic expectations. If I set goals where the perfect version of myself has to show up 110% of the time, I'm screwed. It's not gonna happen. Know yourself. I know that I'm creative, I love to have fun, and I'm also very lazy. I need to make it easy for myself to get things done even on the worst days when my lazy self are showing up. That means for piano, like I said, leave the instrument out of the case. My piano is ready to go. It's sitting there, music is on the stand, bench is already pulled out. All I have to do is slide in, sit down, and get playing. Versus before I would go, oh, well, I should do some piano. Well, what do I want to practice? I would have to come up with the piece that I want to work on. Then I would have to go find that piece in my library. I'd have to get a copy of it. I have to put it on the thing, sit down, open the piano. That takes too many steps. Slide in, sit down, start playing, I can do that. Make it easy and set goals that are achievable but just feel slightly challenging and maybe just a tiny bit unrealistic and no more than slightly out of reach. So the next one is your goals just don't suit you. If you're new to goal setting, it can be really hard to come up with goals that align with your core values, especially if you don't quite know yourself yet. So for that reason, you might set a goal and wake up one day and realize oh, I really don't care about this. I really don't want to get this done. I don't care about it. The goal should suit you. So I always remind myself that I'm not the same person that I was when I set these goals 5 months ago. And for that reason, I give myself a lot of grace. And my goals are really flexible and malleable so that if I wake up one day and I was ooh, yeah, 5 months ago I really cared about that and now it doesn't matter at all. So let's change that. Let's make that a goal that aligns with my current values and my current self. All right, thank you. That's it for me today. I would love if you wrote me a comment to talk about something that you're working on in your life. Let's share our goals. Tell me what you got going on and how you're working on achieving that. Okay, I hope this helped and you are feeling empowered to go about getting all of the things that you are dreaming about getting done. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. That's it for me. Bye.